Welcome to the fascinating world of Cephalochordata. Today, we are going to explore a tiny, brainless creature that holds the deepest secrets of our own evolutionary history. By the end of this video, you will understand not just what these creatures are, but how the strict laws of physics dictate their very shape and survival. Let us dive in. To begin our journey, imagine you are trying to build a modern skyscraper. Before you start, you examine a simple, perfectly preserved wooden model of the very first building ever designed. In the animal kingdom, the subphylum Cephalochordata acts exactly like that ancient foundational blueprint for all vertebrates, including humans. These creatures, commonly known as lancelets or amphioxus, look like tiny, translucent, headless fish. They spend most of their lives buried in shallow ocean sand. They do not have true brains, eyes, or bones, yet they are the perfect starting point for understanding how complex life forms are constructed from basic biological rules. Now that we know what they look like, let us understand their name. Cephalochordata is a fascinating subphylum of marine animals. The name itself comes from the Greek words kephale, meaning head, and chorda, meaning string. This perfectly describes their most defining feature. Unlike other chordates, where the notochord stops at the neck or disappears after the embryonic stage, in cephalochordates, this stiff, rod-like notochord extends all the way into the very tip of their head. Because they lack a true skull or vertebral column, they are firmly placed as invertebrate chordates. They beautifully bridge the gap between simpler organisms and complex vertebrates. Building on their unique notochord, there is something even more remarkable about these animals. They retain all fundamental chordate traits throughout their entire lifespan, from birth to death. They proudly display a dorsal hollow nerve cord running along their back. They possess pharyngeal gill slits, which we will soon see have a surprising function. They have an endostyle, used for filter feeding, and a post-anal tail. Seeing all these 5 classic characteristics preserved in one adult animal is incredibly rare, making them the ultimate textbook example of a chordate. Before we move on to their genetics, let us see these traits with a concrete visual example. Here we have a detailed anatomical diagram of an amphioxus lancelet. Notice the long, stiff notochord running horizontally from the very tip of the head all the way to the tail, providing structural support. Just above it lies the dorsal hollow nerve cord. Near the front, you can see the prominent pharyngeal gill slits and the endostyle below them, which they use to filter food from the water. Finally, observe the post-anal tail extending past the anus at the rear. This simple body plan is the foundation of our own anatomy. Having seen their anatomy, you might wonder why scientists care so much about a tiny, brainless creature buried in the sand. The importance of Cephalochordata lies in their role as the ultimate evolutionary reference point for vertebrate biology and genetics. Because their genome has not undergone the massive duplications seen in vertebrates, they provide a simplified, original genetic toolkit. Researchers use this toolkit to understand human developmental diseases. For instance, tracing the origin of our own organs, like the human thyroid gland, which actually evolved from their endostyle, would be nearly impossible without them. They help decode how complex structures are built from simple genetic instructions. While their genetics are fascinating, their physical survival presents a unique challenge. One of the most unique characteristics of Cephalochordata is that despite having pharyngeal slits, they do not use them for breathing. Instead, they rely entirely on their skin for gas exchange. Because they lack true gills and a complex heart to pump oxygenated blood, they are strictly limited by the physical laws of diffusion. Oxygen must move from the surrounding ocean water directly through their skin and into their tissues. To understand why lancelets must remain tiny and paper-thin, we must look at the mathematics governing this process. This brings us to the mathematical principle that dictates their evolutionary design, a simplified version of Fick's law of diffusion. The formula states that R equals K times A divided by D, all multiplied by delta P. Let us break this down. R is the total rate of oxygen diffusion into the body, measured in moles per second. The symbol K is the diffusion constant, depending on skin permeability and water temperature. A stands for the total surface area of the skin. The variable D represents the thickness of the skin and tissue. Finally, delta P is the difference in oxygen concentration between the ocean and the inside of the body. Notice that if thickness increases, the rate of diffusion drops dramatically. Now that we have our formula, let us apply it to a healthy adult lancelet buried in oxygen-rich sand. We are given a diffusion constant of 2 × 10⁻⁵ power. The surface area is 0.0004 square meters. The skin thickness is 0.0001 meters, and the oxygen concentration difference is 50 units. We substitute these biological values into our equation. By dividing the surface area by the thickness, we get a geometric ratio of 4, which represents how well suited the animal's shape is for absorbing oxygen. Multiplying everything together, we find a final diffusion rate of 0.004 moles per second. This is perfectly adequate for their slow, buried lifestyle. Having seen the baseline rate, let us mathematically prove why a thick-bodied lancelet would suffocate without evolving gills. We will explore a hypothetical evolutionary scenario. Imagine a mutant lancelet that grows twice as thick as a normal one, meaning its new skin and tissue thickness is 0.0002 meters. We keep all other variables, like the diffusion constant, surface area, and oxygen gradient, exactly the same to ensure a fair scientific comparison. We insert this new doubled thickness into the denominator of our equation. The numerator remains unchanged because the animal just got thicker, not longer or wider. This setup isolates the effect of tissue thickness on survival. Continuing with our proof, we now divide the surface area by the new thickness. This gives us a geometric ratio of 2. Notice that this ratio is exactly half of what it was in the first example. The math immediately reveals the biological danger of this mutation. The efficiency of oxygen transport has plummeted. When we complete the multiplication, we find the new diffusion rate is 0.002 moles per second. This is exactly half of the original rate. We have successfully proven that doubling the thickness cuts the oxygen supply in half, meaning this mutant would struggle to pull in enough resources from the water. So we have proven that a thicker body drastically reduces oxygen intake. This brings us to a profound biological conclusion. This mathematical result perfectly explains the evolutionary limitation of cephalochordates. Because they rely entirely on diffusion, they are evolutionarily trapped in their tiny, flat, blade-like body shapes. Unless they were to evolve complex gills and a pumping heart like true fish, they simply cannot support a larger mass. This strict physical boundary, dictated by Fick's law, is exactly why you will never see a lancelet the size of a shark. Physics directly controls their biology. To wrap up our journey into the world of Cephalochordata, let us review the most important ideas. First, these remarkable creatures are the living blueprints of our own chordate lineage, offering a window into our deep evolutionary past. Second, they are uniquely defined by retaining all 5 classic chordate characteristics throughout their entire lives. Finally, because they lack complex respiratory systems, their body size and shape are strictly governed by the mathematical laws of diffusion. Understanding the lancelet is not just about marine biology. It is about looking back in time to see the humble origins of every vertebrate on Earth. Great job following along.